while we're waiting there, just a question for Kevin, and two questions in one really, but we've one acronym there which might just be worth explaining. STAR, scale, and effectiveness based on evidence, not opinion. Where do you start? Over to you, Ian.
Is this
should be live there, yeah? You're up.
Okay, how are we doing? Even have a counter on it, okay. Okay, so I suppose for those of you that don't know me, I'm speaking on behalf of the Association of Energy Engineers. I'm a member of the Irish chapter, so I've given you the details there of the Irish chapter of the Association of Energy Engineers, which is headquartered in the States but multinational at this stage. The mission, which you'll see here somewhere, is just to give you a background as to where we're operating in Europe. So these are chapters in Europe, in Ireland, Cyprus, Bulgaria, Spain, Slovakia, Hungary, UK, Romania, etc. So reasonably active with mainly in the area of training and certification, but as a sort of representative body for energy engineers. So looking at it from the point of view for 50,001, and the thing that I was asked to talk about here was why doing audits. Like, the purpose of doing audits from a management system point of view is to assess the effectiveness, and from an energy audit is to give you opportunities for improvement. Okay? Purpose of doing audits is not to find fault with something. It's not the auditor isn't paid for the number of non-conformances they find. They're basically there to assess the effectiveness, assess the compliance systems. Okay. Some people have the idea of, oh, who's the auditor that we have, so that we can judge what we're going to get out of it. That shouldn't be the case, because effectively getting auditors, any auditor, when they audit in the correct way, should come up with the same set of findings. If a finding exists, a finding exists. It's a finding as opposed to an opinion. So the difference is different auditors may have different styles, may have different approaches to doing things. Basically, the evidence is what has to lead them to things. Okay? An audit is a sample. Any audit is a sample-based activity, so it's really a case of, for a good auditor, is really from the perspective of trying to figure out what is the correct sample of things, where are the places that they should be looking. And I suppose that's where you do get differences between different auditors. It's a case of, as when an auditor starts out in the game, they're working through a process to try to get, they're starting at the start, trying to get to the finish, and they're working through the process, so they spend more time trying to get through that process. When you get more and more experience in the game, they figure out how to do it more effectively. That gives them more ability to dig in deeper and to get more effectively, find more opportunities and get more benefit out of an audit. Something doing audited, it's not nice being audited, but if people look at audits correctly, it should be seen as a positive activity, as an opportunity to find opportunities for improvement, as opposed to find things that are wrong. Okay. So one of the areas that is kind of topical these days is the whole area of verification, especially when you talk with people from, say, the obligated parties, where they're looking to verify the obligated parties who are trying to get savings that they can use as part of their obligations back into government to form part of the pitch that goes back to Europe to say we have met our obligations. If you're looking at things from a management system point of view, the reason you do verification is to make sure that your money was well spent. There should be no reason in terms of a management system doing the level of verification, whether you're spending your own money or whether you're spending an ESCO's money, should effectively be the same thing. But the one thing to be very well aware of is that just because you've done something that's meant to save money doesn't mean you have saved money. Everybody's probably well aware with the whole idea of, say, if we reduce the pressure of an air compressor by 1 bar we'll save 7% electricity. It's a common thing that you see thrown out on almost every audit report you see. And sometimes when you go to verify the savings, when you reduce the pressure on an air compressor, it costs you money. So you'd wonder how it would happen. But if you look back and you think back, well, if your pressure is already reasonably low, well then, if you think of it, the capacity that's in your air network, the mass or the kgs of air that are held in your air network are not based on the volume, they're based on the volume combined with the pressure. Isn't that correct? So when you turn down the pressure, the mass that's held in your network is reduced. So sometimes you'll find that you reduce the pressure, a load comes on, the air compressor with a higher pressure wouldn't have started, with a lower pressure it starts, and every large mechanical device like an air compressor has a minimum runtime. And that minimum runtime maybe keeps it running for 20 minutes. So you've reduced the pressure to save money. Somebody's given you the audit report, it's a really easy one. You reduce the pressure, you save money, and you find your bill goes up. And the reality is you mightn't even see the bill going up because you just see reasonably level, but you expect that you're making savings. So the whole purpose of verification is to ensure that when you do something that you think has worked for you, that it actually has worked. Doesn't mean you have to do a huge level of metering or whatever. It can be relatively simple. Okay. So in a management system, there's a number of things that should be verified. Some of them are explicit, some of them are implicit. But for the action plan, you need to basically verify the action plan works, and you need to verify that the pieces of the action plan works. From an auditor's point of view, looking to verify, it's not that you have performance indicators, that you have the right performance indicators. That the performance indicators are working for you, as opposed to a tool, or they're meant to be a tool to help you do something, as opposed to a chore that you just have to fill out so that you give it to the auditor when they come in at the end of the year. So verification of improvement in performance. Basically, you have an action plan. The purpose of the action plan was meant to save energy. So you need to verify that it works. Verification of the action plan is basically, again, verifying that you're saving money. You need to verify different elements of the plan. Just trying to figure out, this is probably not working well. But so verification must add value. There's no point in spending loads of money for verification just for the sake of verification. Okay? The one point that I would like to make on it is the importance of the baseline. So there is a requirement under clause 4.44 of 50,001 to develop the baseline. Okay? And some people think the easy way to have the baseline is just, well, the energy I used last year was the baseline, or the energy I used 2 years ago was the baseline. Okay? But the thing that they tend to forget about is, working from an auditor's perspective, 50,001 says energy performance shall be measured against the baseline. Okay? Not should be measured, it shall be measured against the baseline. So if your energy goes up next year and you come back with saying, my baseline was the energy I used last year, my energy's gone up, oh well, that was because it was hotter last year, well, therefore you should have had cooling degree days included in your baseline. It was colder last year, you should have had heating degree days included in your baseline. It's not something that the auditor is pushing you from because they want to push you, it's there because it's a requirement. So sometimes people start out and they say, oh no, we'll just keep it simple, we keep the baseline nice and simple, we leave out all the technical components of it. Well, that's where you run into trouble. Okay? So the point that I was saying at the bottom, if you don't understand what the baseline should be at the end of the planning stage, 50,001, well then you haven't done the planning stage. You need to go back and do it again. Okay? So this is basically what I was saying. Poor baselines effectively mean that you end up having a management system that you're just chasing paperwork. You're doing it for the purpose of paperwork rather than using the tool as it's meant to be, checking are we improving energy. Okay? And the line at the bottom, what I was saying there, is that if you feel you can't develop a relevant baseline, which is something that a lot of people find a challenge with on an organizational level, we'll go back and read 50,001 again, because where 50,001 says you should develop the baseline and your energy performance shall be measured against the baseline, there's a brackets S at the end. There's no need to have a single baseline on an organizational level. If your organization has lots of different activities that are causing you trouble, sometimes the easier thing is to step back and maybe develop a baseline for each of your areas of significant energy use, or a baseline for each of your buildings, as opposed to always feeling, and I've seen this at some stage, some of the, let's say, less experienced auditors expect you to have a single baseline on an organizational level. The answer to that is go back and read the standard. The brackets S is there for a reason. Okay. The baseline is your baseline and not the auditor's baseline. If you feel it's not appropriate just because you got certified 2 years ago, just because the auditor was in 3 weeks ago and they didn't have a problem with it, it doesn't mean that you can't adjust it during the year. For me, from an auditor's perspective, I would prefer to see somebody that's adjusting their baseline to get it right and making 2 or 3 adjustments during the year to get what's right for you, as opposed to thinking, oh, I have to wait till the auditor comes in to get approval for that. It's not the auditor's system, it's your system. All the auditor is there to do is to assess compliance against the standard. Okay. Success to the action plan is made by assessing against the baseline. So basically, from my perspective, the data is the evidence. If you haven't improved, you haven't improved. If you have improved, you have improved. So it's important to get that right. Again, performance indicators. A lot of people run into challenges with performance indicators. Again, it's simply something to make sure that things are working right. Simplicity is typically best with them, as opposed to something that gets really technical. But there are a number of good tools that are out there to help you do this. I don't know how many people have looked at the USDOE website. The USDOE, US Department of Energy, have a free energy performance indicator tool there that can be used to help you to sort of take slightly more complicated data, put it into the tool, develop a baseline for a performance indicator that will work for you. So there's lots of tools like that that are being developed over time, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, just to try and make use of what other people have done before. Okay? From my point of view, performance indicators need to be appropriate, they need to make sense. Rather than chasing a formula that's there, it's there, somebody has to understand why things are happening. Because if you're finding yourself in the situation where you're assessing your performance against something and it's not improving and you don't know what might be causing it, well then it's really a case to go back and reiterate and try to come up with something more simple. So, can I just grab a glass of water there? Usually use the coffee. Okay. Again, there's always a challenge then from having performance indicators in place, typically assessing against your areas of significant energy use, and the sort of challenge is to get them working for you as opposed to just doing them as a chore. To me, it's really a case of striking a balance, because if your performance indicator is too tight, if it's a stretch target, well then you're going to have loads of sort of issues with it. You're breaching your limits all the time. If you're breaching your limits, a bit like the boy that cried wolf, people just expect you to be breaching the limits. It's not really an issue, we don't worry about it, so we leave it to one side. On the other hand, if you leave it too slack, well, the reason for having the performance indicators based around your areas of significant energy use is to see that you're improving, because if you're making improvement on each of your performance indicators, well then you should be making improvements across the whole organisation. So there's a real challenge to try to make sure that it's really working right for you. Okay?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. Put on me there. Okay. So dealing with breaches for them, understand why they occur, investigate, respond. The trick is, the real thing you're trying to do is try to make sure they don't occur there. There's two ways of dealing with it. You can deal with it under the clauses for non-conformance, or you can deal with it under the clauses for monitoring and measurements. For some people that I work with, or some companies that I work with, they take the attitude, if we don't raise a non-conformance with it, well then people won't react with it, they won't care about it, so therefore we'll use the non-conformance route. Other people will take the approach, if we raise non-conformances, in this type of organisations, people get fired for non-conformances, so therefore, if we have it raised as a non-conformance, what will happen is the level will be pushed down and it won't work. So what's right for one organisation is not right for the other. It's a case of taking the choice that suits you. Okay? Again, going back to principles of auditing, different auditors should come up with the same finding, regardless of where they're looking. To ensure that happens, they need to work based on principles. Principles you have: ethical conduct, fair presentation, due professional care, independence, and basically an evidence-based approach. If they make a finding, they have an opinion, everybody has an opinion, opinions lead you down a certain route. At the end of the day, when somebody's coming out with a finding, it should have no problem with saying, okay, if you're raising a finding, where is the evidence to support that finding? If the auditor can't produce evidence, he's giving you an opinion, he's not giving you a finding. Okay? They need to be competent. The audit team needs to be competent, as opposed to, and a team can be one person, but regardless, if I go into somebody like looking down at Willie, go into Irish Rail, I don't know enough about the rail industry to make me competent to assess the effectiveness of management of trains. So therefore, I shouldn't be the technical expert. I should be bringing in somebody that has competence in that area. So you put together a team that is in a position to properly challenge and properly assess how well the management system is working. The newer standard, I don't know how many people are aware of 50003, which is one of the guidance standards to 50001, but it's a guidance standard with a difference. Insofar as 50003 has been accepted by the International Accreditation Forum, so therefore each of the individual certification bodies, when they are being certified when they're being accredited under 17021, they're also being accredited against 50003, so therefore there's an extra stick that they have to follow. So therefore, effectively, if you haven't read 50003 at this stage, I suggest to read it, for anyone that's interested, that's in that industry. Again, to have a proper audit, the auditor needs to be competent, they need to be independent. The question all comes back is, who is competent? What's competence? It's basically, it's a combination of education, training, or experience. You can't outsource it. You can't say, oh, I have a certificate there, I'm competent. It's up to each body to say, right, the certificate means you might be competent. It gives you an understanding that the person has a certain level of understanding, certain level of experience. You still need to assess them. Any certification body would need to look very closely at it. Guidance documents that are there now for assessing competence. PAS 51215 was developed in the UK. EN 16247 is another, it's a European standard, so they are two good documents to look at. Okay? Again, competence, evidence-driven activity. Everybody has to work off evidence. Okay? From the competence point of view, it's the audit lead is responsible to ensure that the team is competent. It's not just a case of each individual within it. The audit lead has to take responsibility. Okay? In the end, that's from my point of view. Thank you.
Bang on time. Thank you very much indeed.